Good morning, everybody, and thanks for the introduction, Stephanie. We're going to look this morning at the Italian Minibond-Market. I'm going to start by asking a philosophical question: what are mini-bonds? They're spoken about a lot in the press, but I think it's just important to point out straight away that it's not a technical term. It's not a new type of bond that's been introduced. Instead, the term is used to refer to a package of reforms which have made it easier to issue these bonds by certain companies, basically smaller companies and unlisted companies. And the reforms were brought in last summer by the Decreto del Fare, Development Decree, and then amended later in the year by the Development Decree Bis. And so, as I said, the aim is to open up access to smaller companies and unlisted companies to the capital markets, where this was seen as needed since bank debt is drying up for everybody. And so the hope is that by opening up a new channel of financing for the smaller companies and unlisted companies, this could help to stimulate economic growth and get us out of this recession. When we refer in the talk to SMEs, what we're talking about are businesses with less than 250 employees and an annual turnover of no more than 50 million, or an annual balance sheet of no more than 43 million, and this is the EU recommendation definition. Similarly, it's important to say that the smallest companies, the so-called micro companies, are also excluded from these possible reforms. And there we're talking about businesses with less than 10 employees and an annual turnover of up to 2 million. What's our talk going to cover today? Well, first of all, I'm going to just walk us through the main changes to the law and to the tax regime applicable to bonds and commercial paper. Then we're going to have a quick look at the market as it stands today. And then Sabrina will talk about deal structures, how to sort of put mini bonds, perhaps pooling them into an investment fund or such like. And then Sabrina is also going to take us through and share our experience to date of actually, the procedural steps for issuing a bond, and that should be interesting for companies thinking of doing it and just thinking, what are the actual practical steps that need to be taken, and also sharing with you our experience of listing this debt on the new Extramot Pro segment of the Borsa Italiana. I have to say it's been a very positive experience so far. I found it to be very collaborative, which has certainly helped when you're doing something new. So looking now at the actual reforms, they can be divided into tax reforms specifically aimed at bonds and similar securities, which are obbligazioni e titoli similari, and reforms specifically relating to short-term debt, so commercial paper there with cambiali finanziarie, which is with a maturity of up to 36 months. And as I said before, the overall effect of this legislation is to relax certain limitations which were previously contained in the law, thereby, and particularly for unlisted companies and including in those SMEs. So let's look first at the tax changes. And these apply both to the shorter term debt that we were talking about, the commercial paper, and then also medium to long term debt. But excluded in all cases are atypical bonds at PPG, which are the ones which fall outside of the categorization under Italian law of either obbligazioni e titoli similari and cambiali finanziarie. A huge change as regards withholding tax. This is, of course, looking at from the point of view of the investor, a huge benefit. The issuer won't have to apply a 20% withholding on payments of interest if the bonds are traded on the Extramot Pro, or if they're held by a professional investor, and that's it'll know that because the investor will make a self-declaration to the issuer when it subscribes. An advantage then now from the point of view of the issuing company is that there has been a relaxation of limitations regarding whether or not it can deduct the payments of interest it makes from its overall taxable income for corporation tax purposes. We're talking about unlisted companies here, But again, the securities have to be traded in order to fall within this exemption. And similarly, the actual cost of issuance can be deducted from the taxable income of the company. That's specifically set out in the law. This slide is interesting. It allows us to kind of compare, from the point of view, again, of both the issuing company and the investor, the tax regime applicable on one side to loans, so bank debt, and on the other, listed mini bonds, so a capital market debt instrument. Due to the reforms, we've got a lot more similarities in terms of tax treatment. So as I said before, the company can deduct interest up to a ceiling with certain conditions, but 30% EBITDA is possibly the most relevant. Withholding tax, as I've said, no withholding as long as they're listed. And that, if you look at the position for a foreign lender, the 20% withholding is applicable for a foreign whitelist lender, but not if it's a subscriber of mini bonds. So it's applicable for loans, but not for mini bonds. So straight away there, you've got a sort of way in for a foreign investor that previously wasn't available. Tax treatment in the hand of the investor or lender is exactly the same. Stamp duty not payable in either case as long as the bonds are dematerialized, so held in the clearing system. And registration tax is payable for the loan but not for the listed mini bonds. And imposta sostitutiva is applicable for a loan for maturities of over 18 months. But I should just say that in the current draft Decreto del Fare, there's the proposal to make, in both cases, for both loans and listed mini bonds, an option to pay imposta sostitutiva if advantageous. And I think for listed mini bonds with a security or a guarantee, this could certainly be an interesting option. But this is still draft. It may not ever become law. It just remains to be seen. So looking now at the reforms specific to bonds with maturity of over 3 years. Previously, for Società per Azioni, limited by shares, there was a limitation which said that the company could not issue bonds over a certain threshold, and the threshold was the aggregate of its share capital plus legal reserves plus available reserves. This has been relaxed for bonds which are traded or which have an option to acquire or subscribe for shares. So that would be convertible bonds where the debt is convertible into shares of the issuer, or exchangeable bonds where the debt is exchangeable for shares in somebody other than the issuer. So provided the bonds have these features, they won't be counted towards the maximum amount permitted under Article 2412 of the Italian Civil Code. I should just say that as far as SRLs are concerned, no change in existing restrictions, so not much reform there. Another innovation in the development decree was regarding profit participating bonds. So it specifically says that it's possible, again, the bonds have to be over 3 years maturity, but you can have an element of the bond, a payable return to the investor, being linked to the profits of the company. There needs to also be the fixed income element, and that could be a fixed or a floating rate, which must be a minimum of the ECB base rate. And in addition, you can have a portion of the return which is linked to the profits of the company. Previously, only a bank could issue commercial paper, but now it's possible for limited companies, cooperatives, and mutual insurance companies. Again, as I said before, we're talking about short-term debt, and there are the tax advantages we've seen as long as they're either listed or held by a professional investor. One of the major changes is that now they can say they could be in dematerialized form. Previously, you had a certificate which, if you wanted to transfer it to somebody else, meant going and getting an endorsement girata with a notary. Now they can be cleared through a Monte Titoli and dematerialized form, which clearly makes transferability much, much more easy. For unlisted issuers, and SMEs, a sponsor has to be appointed. I know this has been given a lot of attention, and I'll come on to it in a minute exactly what the role is of that sponsor. In addition, another requirement again for unlisted issuers, so we're talking about issuers who don't have any shares listed anywhere. They need to make their most recent annual financial statements available, and they must have been audited by an independent auditor, so not the internal audit of the company. And holders must be professional investors. Now, this role of sponsor, what does it require to do? I should just say there's only been, to our knowledge, one issuance so far of cambiali finanziari under the new regime, certainly listed on Extramot, and which we did. And there wasn't a sponsor because they were not SMEs. It was largely fall into the category of SMEs. So we haven't seen how this would work in practice. They have to assist with the issuance. Who can be a sponsor? It has to be a bank, an SGR, someone authorised to do this kind of activity in Italy, and that would include an EU asset management company, but they haven't. Controversially, the sponsor has to retain part of the issued CPs, so a skin in the game type provision. And apart from there's a derogation if at least 25% of the issuance. There's a sliding scale as to the percentage of CPs that have to be held onto, which I've included here in the slide. Another, could say, onerous task is that the sponsor has to report if the aggregate value of the CPs issued exceeds the current assets of the company. Now, in a previous iteration of the law, this was actually created as a limit, so the limit is no longer there, but it's just the duty of the sponsor for an SME, for an unlisted issuer to report this once this threshold has been exceeded. And the other thing it has to do is classify the issuer at the time of issuance based on its credit quality, sort of five-point classification, and also publish in the company. Weeks ago, Cherved Group published a very interesting study where they tried to sort of look and see what is around in Italy in terms of potentially eligible companies. Their estimation is we're talking about approximately 35,000 companies which are SMEs. In fact, the threshold they used was not the sort of 2 million excluding micro companies, but they went slightly higher for a 5 million threshold. I mentioned in Lombardy alone there are just over 11,000 companies which, in their view, SMEs, which have on their internal rating assessment would be solvent or safe, so a sort of healthy company of the correct size, 11,000 companies. So we're talking about a huge potential mass or critical mass of companies. At the moment, where are we now? November 2013, issuers, just under 20 issuers currently have issued on the Extramot Pro. Most of them are larger companies. So, as we said at the beginning, this law, everyone thinks that it's aimed at SMEs, and it is, but also larger unlisted companies have been able to take advantage of the reform. Let's just have a look at some of those deals. This is just a sample. These are kind of at the higher end, and Diesel, Riag, Cherved, and then these are sort of some of the smaller issues. Look at the size there. We're 2 million, 2.7 million, 1.68 million. So these perhaps are the kind of smaller companies that previously would have only had the opportunity to access bank debt and now have been able to enter the capital markets. And then we just want to share with you, we're very proud to have been already involved in some of the first deals out there, particularly the Buscaini Angelo SPA, that has a double first of being the first and only currently cambiali finanziari on the Extramot, and it was the first the first deal to list on that segment. So we're it took a while, 2 to 3 months of kind of with the Extramot, but we have to say it was a very positive, tremendous. Sabrina's going to talk a little bit about the actual process of how that works. I have just should say what it how open they were to working with us together to come up with the correct documentation. Another deal which is in the press is the first mini bond, so-called mini bond fund, MPS. That's less remained, and there's still work going on to sort of put that together. And then some smaller issuances here, 4 million. And this one by Commerci was interesting because they were secured with bonds. So just going to go back just to looking ahead. I think it's clear the aim of this legislation is clear, and its heart's in the right place. I think whether or not there is success will depend on a number of things. I mean, for a company thinking about whether it wants to do this, then the cost can't be the cost has to be not too onerous for it. Kind of yields are out there, and what kind of market there is, both domestic and foreign. My feeling is that if there's a critical mass of companies coming forward to do an issuance, that will create a market and generally stabilise matters. Looking from the point of view of the investor, of course, they'll want to be able to have adequate financial information on the issuer to be able to make their investments. And then another thing which we touched on, the role of sponsor, which remains to be seen how keen banks and SGRs are to take on the role, seeing as it contains some potentially onerous obligations. All right, thank you. I'm going to pass over to Sabrina now, more in terms of practical guidance of how to do this, which is, as I said, shared on the basis of our experience of advising on these so far. Thanks, Sabrina.
Thank you, Madeleine. Thank you for the introduction and the general overview of the Italian mini-bond market. My presentation will mainly, one side, possible transactions, and on the other side, steps the issuer to issue mini bonds and to admit to trading those mini bonds on the Extramot segment of the Italian stock exchange. As you can see from this slide called Transaction A, this could be an example of structure of deal involving the mini bond. In this case, we will have a certain number of SME companies which intend to issue mini bonds, and this will be subscribed by a professional investor, which is in this case an investment fund, a closed-end investment fund reserved to professional investors. The mini bonds, the fund will directly liaise with the SMEs, will negotiate with the SMEs the terms of the issuance, the financial terms of the so-called Regolamento del Prestito, and will agree with the SMEs all the steps to issuance. The SMEs will then issue the mini bonds, which will be on the Extramot segment, which I will explain further on exactly the role of the Italian stock exchange. And the investment fund, once these bonds are admitted to trading on the Extramot segment, will subscribe those mini bonds. The mini bonds, the units of the investment fund are then subscribed by professional investor, being a closed-end investment fund reserved to professionals. In this kind of transaction, we have a mitigation since the risk itself is mixed within the asset of the investment fund, and the professional is acquiring a portion of this risk. Another type of transaction described in this further slide called transaction B. The bank, in this case, such kind of transaction, in such kind of transactions, the bank can play many roles. The bank can act as originator, as arranger, underwriter, or distributor of the fund, of the investment fund or of the mini bond. In this case, normally the bank does select the SMEs among a panel of SMEs clients of the bank itself, on the basis of certain criteria which are set by the bank itself, also considering the requests of the market. The SMEs considered eligible by the bank will carry on all the steps to the issuance, which I will run, and will issue the mini bonds. Those mini bonds will then be admitted to trading on the Extramot segment in order to benefit from the tax regime of the development decree. And afterwards, the bank may, on one is acting as originator and arranger towards the SMEs. On the other side, it can describe the mini bonds and then try to place them to professional investors, or distribute and act as distributor of the mini bonds directed to professional investor. Also in this case, we have investment funds which are very active in this type of transactions, subscribing the mini bonds, and then the units of the investment fund are subscribed by professional investors. Also in this case, we have the same consideration we made for transaction A. The risk will be mitigated by the fact that the risk connected with the mini bond and the single issuer is mixed in the asset of the fund.
So I suppose the difference between the two transactions, you use the first one more if you already have an investor with a very clear idea of what they wanted to invest in, and you could kind of make a bespoke deal for them.
Exactly.
And the second deal is more putting something together and then seeing what market there is.
Exactly. Thank you, Madeleine, for the question. Going to the standard documentation relating to a mini bond transaction, what we can see is that normally we start having a letter of intent among all the parties. This letter of intent is used to structure the transaction in order to establish the process and define the roles of the parties connected and working together in the transaction. Following, we will have a mandate letter normally among the arranger and the issuer itself, for where the issuer gives the mandate to arrange the deal and to structure the deal. We have one of the most important contracts, which is the loan agreement, the so-called Regolamento del Prestito, which is the document that sets the main terms of the issuance, the duration of the loan, the applicable interest rate, amount of the loan, early redemption by the bondholders, any securities which are connected to the loan, and so on. The loan agreement is normally an annex of the subscription agreement, which is the contract, the document signed between the subscriber of the mini bond and the issuer, regarding the payment obligation, undertakings of both parties, and so on. For the documentation is the whole package of documentation that an issuer needs to sign with regard to the admission of the mini bonds to trading on the Extramot segment of the Italian stock exchange. We will go then through this document more deeply. The only interesting example is with regard to the possibility for the issuer to fulfill some of the obligations, like the publishing of the financial statements, either through the website directly of the issuer or to a contract with the ZDIR, which is an authorized system for the disclosure of information regarding the issue that can be used in this case for the publishing of the financial statement, as well as any information that may be interesting for the bondholders. Another document we may have in this kind of transaction is then the consultancy agreement between an advisor, if the bank mainly plays the role of advisor directly to the on one side it is arranging the deal with the SMEs, and on the other side it can also play the role of advisor of the professional, the potential professional investor. Then we may have a distribution agreement. This distribution agreement may be a distribution agreement with regard to directly to the mini bonds if the bank plays the role of distributing the mini bonds, or on the other side of a distribution agreement with regard to the units of the fund. The agency agreement is another eventual contract with regard to the role of the agent bank in making payments to Monte Titoli and other activities connected to the mini bond. Main steps to issuance. In the slides that I will show you from now on, we are going through the main steps an SME has to carry out in order to issue mini bonds and to admit those mini bonds to the Extramot Pro segment of Borsa Italiana. The Extramot Pro segment, which we indicated before as the segment of Borsa Italiana where those bonds are listed, is a new segment of the Extramot market, started in February of this year and dedicated to the listing of bonds and commercial paper project bonds. The aim of this new segment created by Borsa Italiana was to create a national market for this new bond, which is flexible and low cost for the issuer, and which allows, in this way, the issuer to benefit from all the tax advantages of the new framework of the development decree. With regard to the obligations that the issuer has to carry out before admitting the mini bonds to the trading, first of all, it has to be considered that the issuer needs to look at its bylaws. The bylaws of the issuer are interesting and important in case we are the SMEs that intends to issue mini bonds as is an SRL, a kind of limited liability company in Italy. And this is important because the law provides expressly that the the bylaws of the SRL needs to expressly provide for the opportunity, for the possibility of the SRL to issue mini bonds. In case the bylaws do not provide for this express possibility for the company, then they must be amended, and there have to be a statutory change in order to issue mini bonds. On the other side, SPA are entitled by law directly to issue mini bonds, so the bylaws do not expressly, also if the bylaws do not expressly provide for the possibility to, and SPA is entitled by law by Article 2410 of the Italian Civil Code.
Sorry to interrupt you. So a company before doing any extraordinary operation, the first thing they should do really is look at the bylaws, see if they are already able to do it. If not, an amendment will need to be made.
An amendment, okay. Exactly. The resolution deciding on the issuance of the mini bonds by the companies needs to be for the SPA notarized and then registered by the competent Chamber of Commerce, and for the SRL also the registration is needed, is a requirement of the law. Another requirement for the issuer that has to be put in place before the issuance of mini bond is the so-called register of the issuer. What is the register of the issuer, or also book of the bondholder? On one side, for the SPA, for a Società per Azioni, it is provided by law. The Società per Azioni needs to have the book of the bondholder where all the bonds issued by the company are registered. Moreover, the law provides an express obligation in case the bonds are registered mini bonds, nominative with the name of the bondholder on it, and also if they are dematerialized. The issuer needs to establish and maintain the register of the issuer with all the details regarding the issuance. Another two activities the issuer will carry on is, on one side, the ISIN code request with all the procedure that the company has to follow with the platform, FAIRT platform of Bank of Italy, in order to get the ISIN codes of the mini bonds. And on the other side, the opening of an account with Monte Italy, in case the mini bonds are issued in their form, in the dematerialized form, and then the admission of those mini bonds on the platform of Monte Italy in order to be traded on that platform. The financial statements are a requirement of the Extramot Pro segment. In this case, in order for the issuer to admit to trading the mini bonds, the Extramot, the Pro segment of the Italian Stock Exchange requires the issuer to publish its last two financial statements. Among those, the last financial statements needs to be audited. On this aspect, it is sufficient that the financial statement of the issuer is audited by an external accountant relating to the issuer, which is licensed as an auditor. But it must be an external, not an internal accountant of the issuer itself.
So it could be the company's commercialista, but as long as they're external to the company and have that qualification of revisore, is that right?
Yes, they should be external. Normally, they shouldn't be the commercialista of the company. It should be an external person with no relationship with the company that is listed as an auditor, as a revisore contabile. Then we have the package of documents which relate to the admission to trading. The request of admission to the Extramot segment, which you can find on the website of Borsa Italiana, of the Italian Stock Exchange, in Italian or in English. The documents submitted to the Stock Exchange may be in Italian or in English language.
I mean, I think for now they've all been in Italian.
Yes.
That will be interesting to see. That's certainly a new development for you don't need to
foreign investors.
Exactly.
Then we have the admission document, or prospectus, which is certainly one of the most important documents to be submitted to the stock exchange, and the so-called negotiation notice that will then be published by the stock exchange for the admission to trading of the mini bonds. It's like the completion of the process. Going forward, one of the most important documents we just indicated among those to be provided by the issuer to the stock exchange is the admission document. The admission document is the kind of prospectus which needs to have the minimum requirements of Regulation 809 of 2004, and which can be published by the issuer on its website, and which shall contain a minimum of sections. We have the sections regarding responsibility, risk factors, information on the issuer, which are those required by Annex 9 of the Council Regulation, management and governance of the issuer, the shareholders, financial information, description of the bonds or debt securities admitted to trading, and so on. In this case, the Italian Stock Exchange has a discretion in setting also the minimum information required by the admission to trading. In our experience, the issuer that intends to issue mini bonds and list those mini bonds on the Extramot Pro segment has an active relationship with the Italian Stock Exchange in defining the admission document, which must be agreed previously, and the Stock Exchange can reserve itself to ask more documents if it needs to understand maybe the use of proceeds or the business of the issuer itself. The sections indicated from 1 to 8, in case the issuer is a listed company, may be also omitted. But also in this case, it is the issuer directly liaising with the Italian Stock Exchange, deciding which information shall be disclosed, which information are needed in order for the Extramot segment in order to admit to trading the mini bonds of the listed company. With regard to another important section of the admission document, which is the risk factor section, normally the admission document contains mostly risk factors connected to the issuer. These risk factors are with regard to the market in which the issuer is working, has his core business, the legal risk connected with the change of a legal framework, the breach of financial covenants, use of proceeds, liquidity risk, and so on.
I suppose when you have a security as well, like we saw on Sus Commerci, would there be some kind of explanation also of the legal background sort of regarding the security? Does that come into the risk? Any risks there?
Yes,
inherent in the legal structure.
Certainly, the risk factors section is then tailor-made on the issuer and on the issuance. So it can change. This is just an example of what the main risk factors normally included in this kind of documents are. Going forward and concluding, the issuer has got a number of then, let's call it ongoing obligation once the process is concluded. The process at Borsa Italiana, the Italian Stock Exchange, with the Extramot Pro segment normally is concluded with, once the admission document is agreed between the parties, with the negotiation notice which is published by Borsa Italiana itself. And this concludes with admission to trading the whole process. You can find, of course, of Borsa Italiana's website all the information with the timing of the sending of the documents and the admission to negotiation of the mini bond. Following then the closing phase with the Extramot Pro, the issuer has got some ongoing obligation it has to fulfill with, which is the publishing of the annual financial statement audited, and also in a time frame not later than 6 months after the conclusion, after the approval of those financial statements. It has to publish any information that may have an impact on the value of the bonds, on the price of the bonds, and which can be of interest for the bondholders. Any change in the features of the issuance and in the methods of exercising of the rights of the bondholders, as well as any information regarding the interest rate, the early redemption, and so on. In case then of early redemption, the information notice by a bondholder exercising the early redemption of its bonds must be provided to the Italian Stock Exchange at least 4 days prior to the date for the early redemption. I'm concluded. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, we will be happy to answer, if possible immediately, or by email later on. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sabrina. If you haven't any questions, I think now would be the time to send an email, and we can see them coming up live. Don't all write at once. I mean, I guess there's a possibility after the skin in the game. Okay. Oh, we've had a question: is the skin in the game a requirement for CPs only? Yes, it is. It's only, and not only just for CPs, but only CPs listed by, issued by, let me just remind myself, I don't want to get it wrong. Where it's for unlisted issuers, and the issuer is an SME. So that's where you have the requirement for the sponsor, and one of the sponsor requirements is skin in the game. So that's not applicable to bonds, or even, as we saw, issuances of CPs by a company which isn't considered to be an SME. Any more questions? Okay, first question, are there investment specialized funds that have already started investing in mini bonds in Italy? Well, we don't have a full overview clearly of the market. We've seen certain deals that we've been advising on, so that's a difficult one for us to answer. I think everyone can see the question, so if anyone has a view on that, please share.
Yeah, we have like the mini bond fund of MPS, which is specialized because it's a fund, a closed-end fund and reserved to professional investors, set up only and exclusively for the investment in mini bond. As the MPS with Finint, which is the SGR leading the fund, we have other funds in Italy that are working on the same issue as the one with. As far as our experience goes, BNP launched a fund, and also Banca Akros together with Antilia. Those are the funds at the moment. I don't know if there are more than, but certainly more than those launched at the moment and expressly investing in mini bonds in Italy.
And then another question coming about costs for an issuance of $1 million. Again, difficult one. I'm not sure if we have it. Difficult one, taking into account the overall cost. I suppose you're going to take into account also advisory fees. I wouldn't like to put a number on that. I don't know.
It's not easy
Sabrina,
to say. It depends how many. No, it depends how many actors are.
I think it's, how long is a piece of string?
What we can say, listing fees are not a problem in this case, because Borsa Italiana has very low listing fees, €2,500 for a listing fee, and so the listing is not a big problem. It depends on the roles. It depends if we have an advisor, a placer. It depends. It's not easy, or it depends if it's a deal between the SMEs and directly the fund, where we don't have placer, we don't have arranger, we don't have originator, and so on.
And then I suppose you've got your auditing, your additional audit costs, legal fees.
Yes, of course. This on top everything.
Okay. Well, if anyone has any questions that come after we go offline, then we'll certainly do our best to answer them directly to you. But I think that wraps it up for today. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much
for attending. Apologies if the audio quality wasn't great, but we did our best. Okay. Thank you very much.